Well, I have to say that there are different definitions legally around what a woman actually is. I mean, you look at the definition within the Equality Act, and I think it just says someone who is adult and female, I think, but then doesn't say how you define either of those things. I mean, obviously, that's then you've got the biological definition, legal definition.
In today's video, we will be looking at what the definition of a woman and a man is. Now, do you think this is all going a bit too PC? And though we are open to thinking everybody has a right, if they so wish to class themselves into different categories. Surely at the end of the day, if you have either female or male genitalia, then at a basic level, that is what you are. What are your thoughts?
Keir Starmer sparked a row this week because he's appointed the Women's Minister as Annalise Dodds. I think we've got the audio of Annalise Dodds being asked what a woman is. Here you go, listen to this.
Labour's definition of a woman?
Well, I have to say that there are different definitions legally around what a woman actually is. I mean, you look at the definition within the Equality Act, and I think it just says someone who is adult and female, I think, but then doesn't say how you define either of those things. I mean, obviously, that's then you've got the biological definition, legal definition.
With respect, I didn't ask for that. What's the Labour definition?
Well, I think with respect, Emma, I think it does depend what the context is, surely.
Is there really a context here to consider?
Oh, here we go. She's the Equalities Minister, Sam. That's brilliant. She can't define a woman.
I just think this is such a ridiculous story, and it's a gotcha question, because the reality is, for the past God knows how many centuries, we've defined a woman based on
Since
self.
Adam and Eve, actually. Sam.
Yeah.
Since Adam and Eve, thousands of years.
Yeah, but that's always been based on self-identification or perception. So does someone present as a woman? You know, does someone present as a man? You guys all assume that I'm a man. But that's based on how I'm presenting to you. You haven't asked me to, drop my trousers and prove it. You haven't asked me to provide you any papers.
We're not likely to.
No, well, good, thank you. I appreciate that. And I think it's just, there's this ridiculous sort of gotcha question of define what a woman is.
It's a basic question for the Equalities Minister. What's a woman?
It really is bad if Labour's appointed Women's Minister, Annalise Dodds, can't answer this question.
Well, a woman is...
That doesn't seem to say it depends on the context.
Well, but it does depend on the context, doesn't it?
But you are born male.
I am, so far as I'm saying.
So even if you presented to me as more feminine, if you had a dress on this morning and you've been sat in makeup, you would still be a man.
But you wouldn't know, is what I'm saying. I could be a woman right now. I could have women's parts and I could just be wearing a chest binder.
I want to live in a world that believes in truth.
Yeah.
That's the most important issue that underpins everything.
Can I just say on this, Tony Blair, he was telling Keir Starmer what to do today.
Just going off the topic here for a moment. Is Tony Blair pulling the strings here, and Keir Starmer is a puppet?
In his speech for the Tony Blair Institute on Sunday in the Sunday Times, he was also telling Keir Starmer what to do on immigration, but he also said, don't get caught up in all this wokery. This is exactly what Sam's talking about and what the new Equalities Minister's talking about.
Yes, of course, it's absolutely crazy. I mean, if you can't define the word woman, why is she a woman's minister?
Yeah.
What does that mean? She doesn't know. I mean, it's ridiculous. And we're only arguing about this because of a small minority.
Another good point here. It's always the minority, and not the majority, that seem to rule.
In this country, and it's a tiny minority.
Less than 1%.
Who are unsure about their sexuality. The fact is, there are men and women, full stop. And we ought to just be bold enough and strong enough to admit that. If people want to pretend they're someone else, fine, good luck to them. I've got no problem with that. But the fact is, a man is a man and a woman is a woman. Full stop.
Actually,
there's no question about it.
We're not arguing about this because trans people. We're arguing about this because a very small minority decided that persecuting trans people was good politics.
Who?
No, we're deciding this because a very small but very noisy group of trans activists decided to attack people like me when I was booked to talk at a legal firm on International Women's Day. This is 10 years ago. And I was told I couldn't stand because I'd once liked a tweet of an article in the Daily Mail written by Graham Linehan. That's where this started.
I don't think that is where this started, though. It started with people like Graham Linehan.
To cancel J.K. Rowling. this minority.
Who's cancelling J.K. Rowling? She's going to have 10 billion instead of 25 billion.
She's been banned from speaking at universities by this lobby.
She's been asked not to speak at... She's not been invited to speak at universities. Well, why is it cancellation that you say there's better people to speak at a university than J.K. Rowling? I can think of about 1,000 people that are better to speak at a university than a billionaire that spends all her life on Twitter. I mean, what's she got to add?
Denigrate a woman who's got millions of people into reading books, kids. I mean, you're denigrating as a billionaire. What's wrong if she's a billionaire? She's a billionaire because her books are so successful and they're good.
Yeah, and she could have used she's a billionaire that could have used all of that power and all of that influence to help people. She chooses to spend her time on Twitter attacking a tiny, vulnerable minority.
She's not attacking the minority. In fact, quite the reverse. It's the minority who are cancelling her and preventing her from speaking. I believe in freedom of speech. You clearly don't. I mean, I think it is absolutely absurd that this tiny minority of ludicrous activists have created an issue that never existed before. They've created it themselves because they're attention seekers more than anything else. And it is a waste of time and money for us even to be discussing it.
If you
think outside the box, there is a much bigger picture going on here.
believe in freedom of speech, will you condemn Waterstones, who have fired an employee who criticised a writer who attacks trans people? It subsequently turned out that writer has a history of tweeting things that, certainly in my view, are racist. For using her freedom of speech to defend trans people, the Waterstones fired her. Will you speak out for me, who, for using my freedom of speech to defend trans people, has been attacked repeatedly by the anti-trans lobby? You know, this is not a one-way street.
See, I don't believe there is an anti-trans lobby.
There's definitely an anti-trans lobby.
Not in the same way that there is the trans activist lobby. There are those who are pro-women, I would say, as opposed to pro-women's spaces, women's rights, women's identity, biologically born women. Those people, and I put myself in this category, do not wish any harm on any individual that wants to live a life that is opposite to the gender in which they were born. We don't wish them any harm. Whereas the trans activists wish biological women harm and have actually attacked women at protests.
Well,
this actually is a very good point.
I mean, let's talk about these pro-women campaigners. Graham Linehan speaking at a conference in Ireland on the same platform as anti-abortion campaigners. Let's talk about the pro-women protesters who harassed a cis woman who won a 10K just because she looked a bit mannish. Let's talk about the ones that attacked a woman in a women's toilet because she had a pixie cut and they thought she was too mannish. She didn't conform to the sort of 1950s style of woman.
Get back to the point. The Equalities Minister cannot define a woman.
The Equalities Minister can define a woman, actually. She's aware of the legal definition. She's aware of the biological definition.
Sam, don't you think this whole horrible divisive issue would be really simply solved if someone like Annalise Dodd said, yes, a woman, a biological born woman is a woman, and there is also trans women.
Yeah.
That is it. Simple. Distinguish between the two. Because I will distinguish between you as a man, and if there was a man sat next to you who dressed as female, that would be, for me, other way around.
Yeah,
the other way around. If it was a woman, that would be a trans man.
Well, but I don't think...
And that's okay.
With the exception of a very small group of conditions, for example, if you're putting someone in a cell with them, then that would be part of the part of your assessment, your risk assessment. That you do for all sorts of things.
Yeah.
But with the exception of that, this is a really arbitrary and unnecessary definition.
Let's quickly get, before we go to the news, the gentleman on Blair. Did you think about Tony Blair? Pretty difficult for Starmer, isn't it? Sunday, a huge article from Blair.
Yeah.
Tuesday, there he is again. It's beginning to look like he's not pulling his strings from the back, pulling from the front.
Oh, yeah. And, of course, the great Mandelson is very involved, too. In fact, one of his company, Global Counsel, they are paying for a special advisor to Rachel Reeves.
Interesting.
And it's, I wonder about the ethics of having a paid special advisor to the Chancellor of the Exchequer from a lobbying firm. I find that
because you ran a lobby
if that happened, if a Conservative did that, there'd be uproar. But Mandelson's got away with it because of his cosy nature with Starmer. Yeah, Mandelson and Blair are pulling the strings of Starmer. It's quite clear.
This is unbelievably clear.
Horrific.
It does look unfortunate, doesn't it? The big article on Sunday, knowing he's doing the conference on Tuesday, which would, of course, Sam been organised months ago. It's a bad look.
Yeah, I mean, he's trailing his conference, isn't he? He wants people to people to come to it. I am going to agree with Piers, though. I think it is absolutely wrong for private companies to be paying for SPADs. Yeah. That's a real problem. And if that's happening early on in Starmer's administration, then that's something he needs to get right and get it right immediately, because you can't have that.